Have you ever felt so tired, so lost, and so overwhelmed that you were honestly ready to give up? And, at that very moment, it seemed like God was completely silent, as if you were praying, waiting, believing, but nothing was happening? If this is your case, you are not alone. Many people go through phases where faith feels heavy, where God's silence becomes confusing and even painful. But what if this silence doesn't mean absence? What if, in fact, something deeper is happening right now? There's a powerful moment in the story of Bartimaeus in Mark 10 that most people read quickly and miss. A blind man, ignored by everyone, cries out for help while the crowd tries to silence him. And then, something unexpected happens. Jesus stops. In the midst of the noise, in the midst of the pressure, in the midst of everything, he stops. But what's even more intriguing is what comes next. Before the miracle, before the answer, there's a pause, a silence that seems almost intentional. Why would Jesus, who hears the brokenhearted and sees the pain of those who feel invisible, choose to wait at that moment? Why does it sometimes seem that God hears your cry but doesn't answer immediately? You've probably felt this before. This tension between believing and questioning. Have you ever experienced this? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. What seems like silence may actually be something far more powerful than you imagine, and it could be exactly what God is doing in your life right now. And perhaps, as you listen to this, something inside you is saying, "That's exactly how I feel." As if no one is really listening, as if even God is silent. But let me tell you something in all sincerity, this moment may be more purposeful than you imagine. And before I continue, I wanted to hear from you as well. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far, or even just one word that summarizes how you're feeling today. It may seem simple, but your experience can reach someone who is going through the exact same thing. This isn't just a video, it's a community of real people dealing with real pain, seeking real answers. And if this message has already started to speak to you in some way, consider leaving a like. This helps YouTube understand that this content needs to reach more people who are tired, lost, and almost giving up, just like you might have been when you clicked on this video. And if you feel that this type of content strengthens you, gives you direction, and brings you closer to God, subscribe to the Jesus Beyond Words channel. Because when you subscribe, you not only get to see more messages like this, you also help this message reach further, touch more lives, and make a bigger difference. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and continue bringing this type of content to those who need it. And now, while you're here, pay attention to what happens next, because what Jesus does at this specific moment in Bartimaeus' story reveals something that almost no one notices. There's a detail in this scene that completely changes how you see everything. Try to imagine the setting calmly. It wasn't a peaceful, quiet, organized moment. It was a busy road, people passing from one side to the other, conversations crossed, hurried steps, dust rising with the coming and going of people. Everyone had a destination, everyone was focused on moving forward. It was the kind of environment where nobody stops, nobody pays attention, nobody looks back. And it is precisely in this type of scenario that Bartimaeus finds himself. A blind man, sitting by the roadside, living on the margins of society. Someone who had been ignored so many times that his presence made practically no difference to anyone. He was not part of the flow, not part of the system, not part of the priorities of that crowd. While everyone moved forward, he remained still, invisible. But something inside him changes that day. It's not just another ordinary moment. There's a realization, a decision, an internal movement that breaks the pattern. He starts to shout. It's not a polite request, it's not something timid. It's a cry coming from a deep place, and immediately the reaction around him is the same as always. They try to silence him. They tell him to be quiet, not to disturb, not to interrupt the flow. But this time he doesn't accept the imposed silence. While everyone else moves on, he does the opposite. He insists. He raises his voice even louder. There's something in this attitude that reveals a hidden truth about transformation and mindset. Sometimes, the greatest change begins when you decide not to remain silent in the face of what has always silenced you. And it is precisely at this point that something happens that breaks all the logic of that environment. Something that completely changes the course of the story. In the midst of the noise, in the midst of the rush, in the midst of all that, Jesus stops. Comment below. This makes sense to me. What happens after Jesus stops is perhaps the most perplexing part of this whole story. He doesn't run to Bartimaeus. He doesn't respond immediately. He doesn't resolve the situation right away. There's a space, an interval, a silence, and it's precisely there that many people lose their way on their own journey. Because, if we're being honest, that's the part that hurts the most. It's not when God seems distant, it's when he clearly stops, when you feel that he saw, that he noticed. But even so, nothing happens at that moment. This kind of silence has a profound impact on the mind. it messes with faith, it messes with emotions. It feels like abandonment. It feels confusing. It even feels like a contradiction. But what if this moment is an absence? What if it's part of something happening behind the scenes? There's a hidden truth here that many people don't realize. Not all silence is rejection. Sometimes, silence is the environment where something deeper is being formed. It's in this space that internal decisions begin to emerge, that mindset is tested, that faith ceases to be theory and becomes something real. Think about it. Bartimaeus didn't stop shouting when Jesus remained silent. He didn't interpret that as a no. He didn't back down. On the contrary, he intensified his shouting. This reveals something powerful about transformation. There are moments in life when the answer you expect doesn't come immediately, not because it was denied, but because something within you is still being prepared. And perhaps that's exactly what's happening to you right now. That feeling that God has heard, but hasn't answered yet. That waiting that seems inexplicable. That pause that challenges everything within you. It feels like silence, but it could be a process. And the more attentively you observe this moment, the more you realize that there is an intention behind it, something that goes far beyond what it appears on the surface. Write this down. I'm on this journey too. This completely changes how you see this scene. Back then, blind beggars weren't just ignored, they were treated as irrelevant. They were marginalized people, voiceless, without space, without value within the social dynamic. Being on the sidelines wasn't just a physical condition, it was a position in life. They weren't expected, they weren't heard, they weren't considered. So when Bartimaeus starts shouting, the crowd's reaction is no surprise. To them, it was disruptive. It was someone out of place trying to get attention. And the response is immediate. They tell him to shut up. They try to silence not only his voice, but his very existence at that moment. This reveals something very powerful about how the system works. Everything that deviates from the norm, everything that interrupts the flow, is pressured back into silence. But this is where a powerful turning point occurs in the journey, because Bartimaeus doesn't accept this role. He doesn't accept the narrative that has been placed upon him. He makes a decision that changes everything. He shouts even louder. There's a shift in mindset there, an internal rupture that generates external impact. He understands, even without physically seeing it, that this moment was decisive. And that's exactly what caught Jesus' attention. It wasn't just the sound of the voice. It wasn't just the cry itself. It was something deeper, something invisible to the crowd. Jesus didn't just hear a man. He perceived a faith that refused to be silenced. A faith that breaks down barriers, that ignores rejection, that continues even when everything around tells you to stop. This is the hidden truth behind this scene. Not everyone who speaks loudly is heard, but those who refuse to give up, those who persist even under pressure, activate something different. There is a principle here, a revelation that goes beyond the story and directly touches your own journey. And the more you begin to see this, the more you realize that perhaps what you are experiencing today has much more meaning than it seems. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Everything starts to make sense in a way you may never have realized before. There's a hidden revelation in this scene that completely changes how you see God's actions. The kingdom doesn't begin in the noise of the crowd. It doesn't begin in haste. It doesn't begin in what is visible or recognized. The kingdom begins precisely when Jesus interrupts all of that to listen to the one who was ignored by everyone. Do you realize the impact of this? While the system keeps moving forward, while the voices around try to silence it, Jesus stops. He breaks the rhythm. He changes direction. And this reveals something profound about how God moves behind the scenes of your life. It's not about who seems stronger, more prepared, or more visible. It's about who, even tired, even lost, even on the verge of giving up, still decides to cry out. And perhaps this resonates directly with you right now, because when you feel tired, lost, and ready to give up, it doesn't mean God isn't listening. In fact, it could be quite the opposite. It could be that, at this very moment, something is being aligned, prepared, built from the inside out. That silence that seems empty may be creating space for a transformation that hasn't yet surfaced. This is the hidden truth that almost no one talks about. Silence is not always absence. Sometimes it is a process. It is in this space that faith ceases to be automatic and becomes a decision. It is where the mindset changes, where the journey gains meaning, where something deeper begins to happen without anyone seeing it. And the more you understand this, the more you realize that perhaps the moment you are living now is not a delay, but a silent preparation for something bigger. Comment below. I'm on this journey too. This ceases to be just a story and begins to directly affect your reality. What if the moment you are living now is, in fact, your Bartimaeus moment? What if this confusing, silent, and even painful phase is part of a transformation that has not yet finished unfolding? Think about it calmly. Sometimes you look around and it seems like everyone is moving forward, that everyone has answers, direction, clarity, while you feel stuck, trying to understand what's happening. And in this process, voices emerge. External voices, opinions, pressures, comparisons, and even internal voices, doubts, insecurities, thoughts that try to convince you to stop, to give up, to be silent. But there is an important decision here, a decision that changes the course of your journey, not allowing those voices to silence what God is trying to generate within you. Because, even when it seems like silence, God sees. Even when it seems like absence, God hears. There is movement behind the scenes, there is alignment happening, there is something being prepared that has not yet reached the surface. This is the part that requires a new mindset, not just reacting to what you see, but understanding that there is a greater truth operating beyond the visible. Bartimaeus had no evidence, no guarantee, no immediate answer, but he had a decision, and that decision had an impact. He continued, and perhaps that's exactly what you need today, to keep going, even without understanding everything, to persevere, even when you feel nothing, because Jesus still stops, He still responds, He still moves toward those who refuse to give up. And the more you internalize this, the more you realize that your story is still under construction, and what seems like silence now may be about to become something that will change everything. Write this down: I will not give up. And if you've made it this far, it's because this message has somehow resonated with you on a deeper level. Perhaps you're in this moment of silence right now, perhaps you're trying to understand what God is doing, and the mere fact that you've continued reading says a lot about your journey. If you want to continue receiving this type of content, which helps you see beyond the obvious and understand these truths more deeply, subscribe to the Jesus Beyond Words channel. The idea here is precisely to walk alongside you through these moments that aren't always easy to explain, but that make all the difference when we understand them. If this message resonated with you, leave a comment saying, "This message was for me." This helps create a real connection in the comments and also shows that you followed this path to the end. If you felt this video resonated with you in any way, please leave a like. This helps the content reach other people who might be going through exactly what you're going through right now. And before you leave, there's a video here that perfectly complements this idea. It will help you take another step in this understanding. Click and continue reading there.